And now for our weekly look at all things sport, we are joined by sports writer Liaam Del Carme. Let's start, Liam, good morning to you. Let's start with the Proteas. They were in action yesterday. They beat Sri Lanka quite comfortably, I thought, in the end. But before we get to that match, let's just get your thoughts on the Quinton de Kock kneeling saga.
Where does one start? Look, it was great to see him back in the team. Obviously, a lot was said and written, in the last 5 days, 6 days since it happened. So, in the end, sensible sort of heads prevailed. I think what got us to that situation was a little chaotic and could have been managed better on all sides, actually. But it was great to see him back in the team. Okay, he didn't contribute hugely with the bat yesterday, but he's a very, very valuable player, a player that can perform on the big stage, and I think he will still come into his own later on in this tournament.
Now, obviously, the team that they faced was a young, inexperienced Sri Lanka team. That 4-wicket victory, good enough performance for you against that type of opposition?
Look, often, and it's not just the case in cricket, you are often dragged to the level of your opposition. I mean, that can happen from time to time. And we have to commend Sri Lanka as well. I thought they made a big fist of it. And, they look destined to win that game for long periods. So they made the Proteas fight for that win. I thought, in certain areas, South Africa, let themselves down a little bit. The chase, for instance, was a little bit more chaotic than it should have been. The running between the wickets, in particular between Themba Bavuma and Rassie van der Dussen, was a little odd in that, these guys have batted together for very often. I mean, not just for the Proteas, but also at provincial level. So to have witnessed that was a bit strange. So that's something that they can certainly work on. I think the bowling department is clearly one of the strengths. In Tabrei Samsi, we've got an absolute world beater. We've known this about Kagiso Rabada as well. He wasn't quite on song with the ball yesterday, but he came good with the bat, thankfully, towards the end there. So I think in terms of building blocks, there's a lot going for the Proteas. If you look at team selection, the fact that de Kock came back in made the team stronger, came in for Heinrich Klaasen. There aren't a lot of spots up for grabs. I mean, they do have options, but I don't think there's a lot of spots up for grabs. I think there's clarity in selection now after the first 3 games of this tournament, which I think will only help them going forward.
Quickly, we have to pause and just sing the praises of Captain Themba Bavuma. He's been immense in this tournament the last couple of days. You have touched on it must have been chaotic behind the scenes. And then looking ahead to Bangladesh on Tuesday, anything to fear for the Proteas?
I think when we talk about Themba Bavuma, we always talk about somebody who's calm and who is thoughtful. There's nothing too rushed about him. Although yesterday, in terms of the running between the wickets, that wasn't that pleasing. But overall, I mean, if you look at his leadership, not just on the field, but also the things that developed off the field, the way he managed that, I thought it was almost presidential. I mean, he really stepped up in terms of leadership, and I think going forward in an event like this, it will certainly serve the Proteas well. In terms of qualification, if we've watched the England-Australia game, clearly England will be a significant stumbling block. If the Proteas should beat them, I think that will set them up quite nicely for the rest of the event. But getting into those top 2 spots is going to be very tough. But I think, given what's happened yesterday, I think that will galvanize the side. And not just what happened yesterday, but also early in the week. I think it'll be a galvanizing effect on that side, and it will make them stronger for the remainder of the event.
Quickly, I have to squeeze in a rugby question. The Springboks' next opponents, Wales, were battered yesterday by New Zealand. That tussle between the #1 ranking in the world, also up for grabs over the next couple of weeks. Your thoughts on... Did you learn anything from yesterday's Wales performance?
Not an awful lot. I think going into this game, New Zealand were, of course, they're always favourites going into a clash against Wales. I mean, history has proved that. But also this was a weakened Wales side because of the fact that the game was played outside the international window and Wales had a number of players missing through injury. So it was a much weakened Wales side. In terms of the scoreline and how the All Blacks went about their business, no real surprises there. They put them to the sword, from counter-attacks, for instance, and from broken play, they were as lethal as ever. Wales will be better next week, there's no doubt. They'll be a bit tighter. There'll be more experienced players that come back into the mix. And, of course, the Springboks won't play like the All Blacks did. Whenever we play Wales, it's always a bit of an arm wrestle, and in some ways, and this is going to sound weird, we almost show them too much respect, and the score lines are tight towards the end of the game. I mean, I can think of the World Cup semi-final, for instance, where that game was a bit tighter than it really was supposed to be. So, whatever we saw yesterday of Wales, don't expect the same thing will happen next week. It'll be a tighter contest, but the Springboks should have the beating of them.
Thanks so much for your thoughts. Always a pleasure. That was sports writer Liaam Del Carme with his thoughts on all things sport.